He knows that the more she puts on, the more life takes off. Denim for men who don't have to try too hard.
Touch a little bit of black paint, some Pour 15 just round that grommet fitting, just to finish the job off. And now switch cleaner, a little bit of acid just to take the green off that connector, and then it's contra lube on, and that connector's finished, and that is it. We're signed off on the heater. 8th of Jan 2014, just putting those clips back on the steering column and checking the ignition switch with the Swampy original key. A little bit of copper slip there for these fixing brackets. We're going to tap these spacers on now. We're back on the dash as promised. There's the finished heater over there. We'll be testing the motor on that shortly. So back on the dash for this part of the video. Going for the interior light loom now, cleaning it up. Okay, here we go on these. Just knock these clips back in. I never made it to the wiring harness. I got set up and ready to go. But what I'd done, whilst I was just about ready to get wiring, I'd found Swampy's original keys, including that Ford boot lock key original. And I thought, let's just try the, let's just try the ignition barrel. Now, as you remember, I'd restored the column, but I buggered it up. I got sand in the ignition barrel, and I got sand in the steering column bearing. So when you put the key in to turn it, it was all crunchy. When you turn the wheel, the shaft, it was all crunchy. Even though I'd masked it up, the sand had got in. So I don't recommend doing what I did. I recommend stripping down. If you're going to refurb your steering column, then strip it. It's not too bad to strip. Basically what you've got to do to strip your steering column is you've got some circlips. There's two circlips which are situated up at the top here. There's a bearing which sits on that serrated part, so that bearing's there. You've got a bearing cap on it there. You've got a circlip in front, circlip behind and front. Then you've got a circlip down the bottom end, down this end, with a washer, springs at the top. You've got a cap there and a cap there. It's not too bad. Just some circlip pliers will get you moving. And you tap this out. Once you've got the circlips off both sides of that bearing, that one's a bit tricky to get to. This side, you've got to get in from behind. You tap this down, and the nut slides the bearing out, and you're away, leaving you with just this tube, the collapsible tube. The reason they are concertinaed like that is so if you have a crash, the whole thing collapses. And if you stuff the car, the front end, what U-strap is, you used to stab yourself on the wheel, so they made them so they compress. So that compresses, and so does this tube. Does the actual shaft is on the slider. That's hollowed out. This slides in and out of there. It's quite stiff. But if you have a crash, then the impact comes up, and then it's telescopic. So this squeezes in, and that saves you from stabbing yourself on the steering wheel. Well, it reduces the injuries anyway. That's why they did it. So when you take it apart, you might have to just reset your telescopic width, because when you tap it here, you can it can move. They give you the recommended length in the manual. To get it back to the right length, you just tap that with a chisel lightly, and it'll adjust. Hold this in the vise, tap it here, and then get it to the right length before you reassemble it all. So that's in bits. I'm going to repaint this now. There's where I masked it up, so I may as well just get that repainted. It took some hits when I took it apart. I'll clean that up and just give it another paint. So there's my steering column in bits. So what I'm going to do, clean all this off. Any evidence of sand I'll blast off with air, so you can see grains there. See it? Horrible. So I'll wipe all that down, and then the bearing I've repaired, put it in thinners, and then put compressed air through it, and then just check that every single individual ball bearing is free, which it is. And then we'll put some lithium on that and put it back together. We'll get rid of all the sand. It's probably not done it any harm, because it could have been rusted. Swampy was stood for a long time, so really it's not a problem for me to have took it apart. And you can see now that bearing's very free, which before it wouldn't even turn. So it will be nice smooth rotation of the wheel, no crunching from the sand. Over to the lock. Well, to get it apart, you've got these security bolts designed to stop you from undoing your lock for theft reasons. They've got no head on them, so you have to chisel them off by basically putting your chisel in and then tapping it round. They come out quite easy. You need 2 new snap bolts. They come with a bolt connected to it, and you well, you don't over tighten it, but you tighten it, and that top of the bolt shears off, leaving a blind head in that saddle. So that's how that works. You have to get 2 new ones of those. I think I've got some in the stores, I think. Taking that off, that gives you this lock. You then need a lock pick to access this little hole here, and what happens is here on the barrel itself, or the tumbler, yeah, the barrel, by putting the lock pick into there, which is basically a metal snap-on do them. I think you can get them from automotive shops. You could make your own with a watchmaker screwdriver. You just have to poke around in there till you squeeze this clip. You see the bottom of this, the top of the lock there, where my thumb is now. You're pushing that down, and it compresses this little spring, which enables the barrel to withdraw. The tumbler's then built into the barrel, of course, and there's a circlip on the end of it there, quite a heavy duty one. You've got a little lock engaging pin as well, which stops you from pulling the key out, I think, or it stops this from pulling out. So into thinners for that, washed it in thinners. It's now very smooth, it turns like silk. So we'll put some graphite powder on, a little bit of copper slip as well, and then put it all back together, and then 2 new snap bolts, and then that's back how it should have been. For the top of your this is the hardest part. The top that holds your indicators and cowling on is riveted on. You have to drill the rivets. They're steel rivets, not aluminium ones. So because the steel rivets, they're tricky to drill. You don't have to take this off. I took it off because I was going to get this powder coated, and I can't powder coat the aluminium piece, it would have melted. So I've took that off, but I would recommend leaving it on, because it's not nice to take off that. So that's where I am. That's why I got diverted off the loom. I just couldn't rest knowing that the lock and the bearing was all full of sand, because I thought if I don't do this now, it's going to get to putting the car back together and I'll be, oh, I need to do that. I'd rather just get the job out of the way. So a diversion there from the wiring again. I'm going to get on that wiring. I'm trying to get on that wiring. Right, this has got to be one of the last jobs. Surely it is. Okay, so let me put all this back together. No need to film it, really. I might do a few clips. I just want to get moving. I want to get back to that harness and loom. Okay, that's what happened. That's the diversion. That's where I messed up. I've messed up on the sandblaster. Got into all the locks and all the bits. Sorry about that, but we live and learn. It's not a harmful thing, because it probably needed a little service anyway. This key wasn't the smoothest of operations, even when it hadn't been blasted. So now it is. So I've gained on it. Okay, next clip. Right, that's back together. Just got to put this little clip on it there. The spring action on the steering column lock wasn't fantastic either, so we're bathing that in thinners. I'm going to break down any of that old grease that's packed in there, and I'm going to try and get new grease in there, or at least inject copper slip into it. I'm going to just wash this around now, try and blast the sand out of it if there is any in there, and then we're going to force copper slip in. So hopefully that'll free up in a minute. Okay, you can get that ignition operating shaft out by turning it and letting it fall out this way, get it in the right position, it comes out. That leaves us with that mechanism now. See it there? That's where the sand was. It just got in there, but there was also some pretty poor grease in it as well that had sort of set like gungy. So that was never smooth anyway, so we're going to get that really a nice operation now. So your grease can sort of set in your lock and then it becomes a sort of a stiff lock to operate, but that's running really smooth. So it's a blessing in disguise, I'm glad, because I wouldn't have done this otherwise. So yeah, we've got it back to how it should be now. Got the rest of the crap out of there, blasted it out, just get the air nozzle done and just put it in and so that gets us back. So I'm going to reassemble now with the grease on it and put it back just lightly there. I noticed that I don't know how they actually lubricated them because it had a trace of grease on it. So I'm going to hope copper slip's okay for this. Putting it back together now. Air gun to blow the copper slip in. Put the copper slip in there and use the air. That blasts the copper slip into all the little bits you can't reach. The lunatics are on the grass. Right, that's back together. So, key in. There's your locking pin there. See what you do to get your lock out. If you ever want to get your lock out, you've got a flatter screwdriver than this. It's got to get in there and then push forward and you'll feel a little spring and that's locking the barrel. And you need the key in position 1 to get the assembly out because it's made foolproof, so you need the key in position 1 and then operate that little clip and then the barrel will withdraw. You've just got to use a lock pick really. You need to get in at a slight angle and then you'll feel this little spring pressed down. It's quite tricky if you've never done it before, but anyway, we're on with that. So it's all running, locking's popping in and out, smooth, turning when I do it. Hang on, see if we can get it with one hand. Probably, there you go, see. In it goes and then I'm out there, and then key out. Key's going in and out nicely. So that's it. That lock's repaired and rebuilt. Lubricated up and done. So I just got to get 2 snap bolts. Then I've got to get all that cleaned up tomorrow. That took me 2 hours, nearly 3 hours to do. Just a quick note to remember: to get proper operation of that steering lock there, you actually have to have the ignition switch connected at the back. It does have a bearing on it, the way that it pops out. The resistance on the switch at the back gives this the correct position and allows it to suddenly pop out. So when you turn your key into position 1, it'll release it, but then only when you turn it back to 0 does it pop out. That's so that when you're still in the car and you just sort of turn your engine off, your steering lock won't come on until you turn your key fully. So it's kind of like interlocked, and this ignition switch helps with that. So if you're building it up and you're trying to get it going on the bench and you haven't got your ignition switch on, you'll be wondering why it's not quite working as it should. You can still get it to work, but it doesn't do that pop action until that's connected. So just a little footnote there for you if you're rebuilding a ignition switch. So that sums up that little job. Took longer than I thought, as they all do. Still not got onto the wiring, so I promise you I'll be onto that tomorrow. Said that last time, didn't I? Okay, so that goes with that, and now we'll be cleaning this up and refitting everything on there. Now that bearing's lovely and smooth. See you tomorrow. I'm going to bed.